Hello and welcome to a very special video edition of the Liberate Continuum podcast. I'm here with Dave, and we've been doing a lot of thinking about time travel.
Yes, we have, Mike, and even got Wayne in on the discussion. He just showed up down our end of the building this morning and gave us the expected WTF.
And it became very apparent that visual aids are necessary. So that's what this video is all about. We've been thinking about the time travel model that Catherine proposes in episode 301 using that tree image. And some of our listeners have concurred with Dave's opinion from our first podcast for season 3 that the destruction of an entire timeline doesn't seem to fit with our idea of the way time travel works in Continuum. Now, I wasn't a big fan of the tree analogy anyway, because that image implies that the branches end, which of course they don't. Time is theoretically infinite. So today we're going to attempt to create our own model for how we interpret the time travel rules in Continuum implied in the season 3 premiere. The way I see it, there are two possibilities. We'll call option 1 the one true timeline, and option 2 history's natural course.
All right, now, the idea of having one true timeline would be that any change that happens to history as a result of time travel completely destroys all other possible timelines. Only one remains. There is no multiverse. That is, we're not dealing with a fringe-like world where in one version of New York, the World Trade Center buildings are still standing and the copper of the Statue of Liberty doesn't oxidize. This would fit with the fact that the original timeline, where Emily is dead and all of our time travelers are in glass boxes, was completely destroyed in episode 301. However, it doesn't fit at all with the tree analogy. There are no branches in the one true timeline model, just detours that negate the original course, creating a kind of wiggly trunk. It also creates all sorts of interesting, though not impossible, paradoxes, such as the existence of two Alex, one of which has no home timeline to return to. And finally, it supposes that the freelancers are trying to keep the one true timeline on a specific course determined by a future as remembered by the temple founder 1,000 years ago, a future which may no longer exist due to course corrections along the way. Have they been 100% successful in avoiding history changes up till now? Were Tommy Oliver and Emery Wallace, the dead freelancers mentioned in episode 208, successful in whatever their missions were? We may never know the answers to those questions.
Now, the other option we call history's natural course, and this is the one that we ascribe to. This theory posits that there are multiple timelines, each with its own discrete set of circumstances and perhaps even different freelancer cells keeping an eye on things like Dave suggested. The mission of the freelancers, that is, the pruning of the tree, would be to make sure that existing timelines stay to the general course of history, with only minor differences being allowed. If any branch gets too crazily off course, it is pruned by some as yet unknown means by the freelancers, perhaps by sticking all the key players in glass cages, who knows. And although this theory does not explain how the original timeline of the show would completely implode, or why they would need to collect corpses, we might suppose that because Alec is the one making the changes, his power over the course of history is much stronger than the average person. Alec is not just some nameless H.G. Wells scientist exploring history. This is like Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great hopping into a time machine. Alec doesn't just create a new branch, he moves the entire trunk. Perhaps that fact alone creates the unprecedented destruction of a timeline.
Now, obviously there are problems associated with both of these models, but how do we reconcile the tree of branching timelines with the complete destruction of the original timeline? They almost seem to be mutually exclusive. Not to mention the question marks we still have hanging over the collection of corpses, the resurrection of Curtis, and the defection of Escher. Will Season 3 answer these questions, or will we be scratching our heads all the way to the series finale? Either way, we're enjoying the ride.
And maybe we'll get some answers in episode 302 coming up, but this is our time travel theory for now. So thanks for joining us for this video edition of the Liberate Continuum podcast. See you guys later.